Good morning, good morning. Hello, dear participants of the course on the Advanced Professional Program, Interactive Network Technologies for Music Education as part of the Soft Mozart program. The course was developed by the author, Elena Vladimirovna Heiner, in collaboration with the Educational and Methodological Laboratory of Music and Computer Technology at the Herzen Russian State Pedagogical University. I, Galina Vasilyevna Mojaiskaya, will be teaching this course. I will be conveying almost verbatim the knowledge I received from the author. At times I will be quoting directly. The course consists of 8 modules, and at the end of the training, you will need to take an interactive test based on the material covered. Our classes will be divided into 2 parts, theoretical and practical. Theoretical will be presented during the lecture, but to reinforce the material, you will also be provided with resources for each session in the form of articles and videos. Additionally, I recommend that while working through the material, you briefly write down the main ideas that are important to you as bullet points on paper, because this will help you internalize the material on a different, higher level. You can also type these bullet points into your journal on the software website. Today I will tell you and show you how to start a journal. The thing is, one day you will be giving formal presentations at seminars, conferences, or even organizing important meetings, and these bullet points will definitely come in handy for you. After each lecture, I will be ready to answer all your questions, so make sure to write them down somewhere. To complete the practical part, you will need the Soft Mozart program, that is, Soft itself. To do this, you will need to send a request to the author of the method and program to get access to the program for 30 days. I will also write instructions on how to do this in Google Classroom. You will receive an important email. So you will log in, then see the provided link, and then you can download it. Install it securely on the specific computer or laptop that you will be using for your important work or studies. A tablet will not work. It will not be possible to transfer the license to another laptop, so it's best to decide on your workstation right away. First, download the demo version if you haven't already to check whether the program and the instruments synchronize properly. Only after that should you download the 30-day version. Also, download the cards from the demo version of this type and the key bookmarks. You will definitely need them for your important future work. And by the way, you can laminate them so they last longer. The demo also includes the alphabet song and the book You Can Be a Musician by Helen Vladimirovna Heiner. And by the way, you can start reading it little by little. Next, assignments and additional materials will be distributed in Google Classroom, as Maria Segayevna already mentioned. You will need to submit your report on the practical part on the Soft Mozart website in your diary under the Teacher Training section. The link to this section will also be posted in Google Classroom. These are our organizational points. Now I will share my screen. Where would I actually like to start our lecture today? Of course, with the author of the method. Elena Vladimirovna Heiner Nikolaeva was born in the city of Leningrad, which is currently known as St. Petersburg. Then her family moved to Ukraine. Elena Vladimirovna graduated from a prestigious state music school with a major in classical piano. She graduated from the music college in Zhytomyr with a specialization in music theory and music history. She graduated from the University of Arts, the Conservatory in Kharkov, specializing as a musicologist, music critic, and teacher of music history and theory. Elena Vladimirovna Heiner. She spent many years engaged in research activities. Since 1980, her main field of study has been music pedagogy, psychology, and the fundamentals of music education. Now, I'd like to take a moment to make a very important note here for all of us present. Her very first significant academic publication was indeed proudly made by the highly esteemed and world-renowned Moscow Conservatory, specifically within the pages of their comprehensive and influential book, which was aptly titled How to Teach Solfeggio in the 21st Century. And this notable work was officially released in the year 2006. Her research on the most effective methods for teaching music literacy was further developed and meticulously described in a comprehensive series of scientific publications prepared by prominent leaders in the dynamic field of music technology and pedagogy, specifically Professor Irina Borisovna Gorbunova from Herzen University and Mikhail Sergeyevich Zalivatny from the St. Petersburg Conservatory. At the very beginning of the 21st century, on November 7, 2001, yet another new system for teaching music using the color piano appeared in the world. Elena Vladimirovna named it Soft Way to Mozart. Many people think that Mozart's name is mentioned because it is suggested that all children should be taught from an early age. But I can't argue with that interpretation. The words soft way translate as gentle path. Of course, this clearly suggests that computer software will be an integral part of the process. However, few people truly realize that the actual name of the system carries a much deeper and more significant meaning than just early music education and computer games. The word soft means gentle, tender, but it is also used in another, more important sense. It truly conveys the main goal of this approach: gentle, unobtrusive, and non-violent learning. It is specifically intended to nurture the unique qualities inherent in each developing individual child. The same goes for the name of the great Mozart. In the phrase, the path to Mozart, there is yet another mystery. Why path? Where exactly are we heading? To the 18th century, armed with computers? There is also a truly deep and very hidden meaning in these words, and you will definitely learn about it from our code. So, Soft Way to Mozart is a comprehensive suite of educational music programs specifically designed for the computer and a connected electronic musical instrument, such as a synthesizer or a piano. This system has been presented at the Exhibition of Scientific Achievements at Herzen University in St. Petersburg, recognized by the Moscow Conservatory, the Rimsky-Korsakov Conservatory in St. Petersburg, and the Madrid Conservatory. It has been approved by the Ministry of Culture of the Russian Federation, certified in Oxford, UK, and is used in more than 60 countries around the world. The program is suitable for people of all ages, starting from 2 years old, with different levels of preparation and regardless of abilities, including people with disabilities, that is, with limited health capabilities. Helen Heiner discovered a fact overlooked by musicology, that the musical staff is not just a set of lines and spaces, but a system that integrates the symbol, the note, and the sound through the keys. The piano keys, which are visually and precisely aligned with the lines and spaces of the musical staff, are in actual fact the truly missing sounding half of this entire musical system. The connection between the keys and the notes became obvious and clear. It is visually apparent that each line and each space corresponds to the white keys. On the contrary, that is, the author of the method turned the staff upside down with the keys on top to show the close connection between the keys and the lines and spaces of the staff. The vertical staff became a significant scientific discovery, a remarkable scientific achievement, a verifiable scientific fact. It is quite easy for any beginner to readily navigate the musical staff when it is carefully turned 90 degrees with the keys positioned on top. The beginner sees a map in front of them and understands what the left hand plays, what the right hand plays, and exactly which key needs to be pressed on the lines or between the lines. Turning the staff connected two worlds that were previously considered separate and unrelated: the world of keys and the world of feet. This really helped to highlight some very important and significant patterns about precisely how exactly we develop, what distinct stages we typically go through, and what valuable insights we gain while learning to play the piano. Let's look at another interesting fact. A person's perception by nature is point linear, in a sense quasi-linear. The eyes can only read one line, a single track of information. In the traditional presentation, there are 22 such tracks on the musical staff. The human eye is physiologically not prepared to read several lines of musical text at once. But a solution was found when the musical staff was turned upside down with the clefs on top for a beginner student. Now, there's absolutely no need to calculate or even guess what precisely needs to be played, because there is a single comprehensive track of information. This is the bright yellow focal line, which clearly contains all the essential information about exactly which musical notes to play and precisely how long to hold them on the key. This is incredibly convenient for a beginner whose visual perception is not yet fully trained to the intricate scale of the musical language. In other words, it's not yet trained to navigate the complexity of the musical language. There's a truly interesting and significant fact. Japanese scientists meticulously studied the minute micro movements of the human eyes while reading regular text, and specifically found that before truly reading a word, the eyes carefully scan each individual letter. This observation once again powerfully confirms that human vision inherently works in a very pinpointed and precise way. A note is an abstract concept. For small children, ages 3 to 4, before elementary school, their thinking is concrete and visually imaginative. Abstract thinking is still developing, so in Soft Mozart, each musical note is clearly associated with a distinct image, much like in a comprehensive alphabet book. For example, do represents a door, re, rain, mi, mirror, fa, farm, sol, a salt shaker, la, ladder, and tie, a teacup. These illustrative pictogram images are prominently displayed on the alphabet notes of the musical staff and on bookmarks behind the keys or stickers placed directly on the keys. This innovative approach allows every beginner to instantly find and accurately press the specific key corresponding to the musical note. Furthermore, clear alphabet presentations of the musical text significantly help to overcome physical challenges during learning quests more quickly and efficiently without experiencing any unnecessary and excessive strain on the muscular system. By overcoming physical difficulties, the student is able to direct the freed-up attention to solving more complex and abstract tasks, such as playing by sheet music without visual aids, for example, memorizing a piece, playing with a metronome, and also working on dynamics, refining technique, and overall artistic performance. Through the multimedia programs of Soft Mozart, we can see the birth of a sound, its development, and its completion, and become direct participants in this process in real time. Each note duration in the program is represented as a blossoming flower bud. If the duration is not held long enough, an animated character, a little gnome, appears, and the student understands that they need to hold the key a bit longer. A butterfly appearing on the flower signals that it's time to release the key. An animated spider warns that either the wrong key has been pressed or the note was played too early. In other words, the notes and their durations have become responsive and alive. The student doesn't need to calculate the durations. They are built into the program's algorithm. The duration of each note has become visible and visually controllable. Convenient software helps not only to read music, but also to monitor mistakes. While playing, the student sees their shortcomings and mistakes on the screen and corrects them independently. The truly unique animated hint is clear and understandable to all beginners, and they learn very quickly. Next, we will carefully examine each important aspect in much more detail. Number, letter, note. This is what the honey of words, numbers, and sound is based on. At school, in math class, students study numbers and operate with them. In language, it's letters and they operate with them. In music, there are notes. But what about music lessons? Can most people read sheet music? Unfortunately, no. Every school typically has music lessons, but in reality, these are often lessons primarily about music, where, as a general rule, students simply listen to musical pieces passively, sing along, clap rhythms, play various percussion instruments, and even draw during the music class. They even diligently write down song lyrics from the teacher's dictation. Of course, it's not like this in every school, but in most of them it is. Everything mentioned above has nothing to do with learning the language of music or music literacy. Music should be studied first and foremost as a language and only then as an art. Moreover, music is a written language. This raises a question. There are no programs, no methods, no approaches. Or maybe there just actually are, but they really don't work. The situation can and should be fixed. There is a tool that can make music lessons truly lively, more interesting and exciting, and effectively teach children to read music once again. Let's take a look at what a note is. A note translates as a sign or a mark. It is a graphical representation of a musical sound as well as the sound itself. A note has three main parameters. These are pitch, which is the number of oscillations of the sound wave, its position on the staff on a specific line or space, and the duration of the sound. These three elements are one whole, but they are taught separately from each other. In other words, we see the fact that the note is split apart. In Soft Mozart, we consider the note as a trinity. When studying any subject, we must take into account both general and specific features. Currently, these are mixed up at the very foundation of music education and need to be reconsidered. General features are the foundation that shapes the entire structure of any knowledge. The fundamental alphabet in reading, the comprehensive multiplication table in mathematics, the globe in geography, and the detailed periodic table in chemistry are all excellent examples of generalities that effectively unite more specific individual components, such as letters, numbers, continents, or chemical elements. Musical sounds and notes can be grouped according to the following fundamental characteristics. Keys, in essence, are lines and spaces, and lines and spaces are keys. Individually, keys or notes are more specific concepts. The general system, however, is keys and notes, features of the arrangement of octave keys. Notes on lines and spaces are subpoints. The particular should not be placed before the general, as it will prevent you from seeing the whole picture. Therefore, the arrangement of the black keys, the precise sequence of octaves, and the various signs of the musical text should always come after the system of keys and notes. The general aspect is the overall pitch, the number of vibrations, and the place of disruption, while the particular aspect is timbres. All musical sounds have a specific pitch and a specific place on the staff. These characteristics are general and unifying. On the other hand, the timbres of musical sounds are specific to each instrument and have nothing to do with the fundamentals of musical notation. Therefore, music lessons should begin with the keys of the piano and the staff, so that everyone can see the general structure of the musical system. Before moving on to more specific elements, the piano is, in general, the basic instrument for mastering the language of music. The ranges of different timbral instruments are shown here in different colors, and it's clearly visible that this is only a part of the full range. Grand staff is the general set of clefs, and these are the specific ones. The treble and bass clefs are not separate musical systems, but in actual fact, two distinct parts of one perfectly symmetrical musical system, in which one is essentially the mirror image of the other. This fundamental relationship highlights their interconnectedness. The lines of the treble and bass clefs are positioned on either side of middle C, which serves as a central reference point, much like a thermometer. That is precisely why the counting of the lines and spaces in the bass clef should be done, not from the bottom up as we are typically used to doing, but rather from the very top down, starting from 0. If a music textbook presents it differently, then it absolutely should be modified. But regardless of the specific place or institution, this is a truly unified system of musical grammar and should be presented as a cohesive whole from the very beginning of any music course. For students of any age, studying different clefs for different instruments is a common offshoot and cannot be introduced before the general fundamental structure. because of the specifics, the students fail to see the entire system of musical grammar. Note duration. It is not a form, but a process. A common feature of sound duration is the presence of a beginning, development, and ending. The graphical representation of duration is a more specific concept and should be introduced only after becoming familiar with how a sound is born and develops, and how it ends. Only interactive computer technology is capable of adequately conveying the beginning, development, and ending of a sound in real time. Let's take a closer look at how this works. So the beginning of a sound. Here we have a tightly closed bud. Then the bud slowly begins to gracefully open into full, vibrant petals. The beautiful development of the sound and the delicate butterfly gently resting on the lovely flower is the perfect ending of the sound. The actual sounding time is a short interval that cuts across the entire musical fabric. Real time is a moment represented as a single, continuous line, the precise moment of sounding, in which sounds are born, gracefully develop, and ultimately end. This singular line actually unites absolutely all the common and fundamental elements of music: pitch, melodic lines, and spatial arrangement, notes, and accordingly, keys. The developed Soft Mozart system is a general and unified system of various different forms of spatial expression of music. Music education everywhere should always begin with it. Why are we looking at all this together? Every dedicated teacher should know that when diligently studying any subject or complex phenomenon, it must first be considered as a complete and unified whole, and only then move to the intricate details. This is precisely how our human perception naturally works. In other words, we should always approach things from the general to the specific, from the concrete to the abstract, from the simple to the complex. This fundamental principle was already thoroughly described in the century of didactics. Comenius, for example, eloquently wrote that any language, science, or art should first be taught in such a way that students form a comprehensive understanding of the entire whole. Real, tangible objects invariably precede formal examples and abstract rules. Everything that hinders learning must be eliminated. The decisive role in learning is played by sensory perception. All senses are important when a child is studying the world around them, but the predominant role is given to vision. In our case, in music, vision should serve as a support for the muscles, not as an extra burden that adds new difficulties. The next thing I would like to discuss next is the musical staff itself. The musical staff is not just a set, but a system. The musical staff is only half of the system without the keys. We don't learn just half of the alphabet or half of a globe, do we? However, the keys and notes as presented in textbooks are shown separately. The grand staff is commonly presented as a fundamental set of treble and bass clefs, as well as distinct lines and spaces. Here's precisely what Wikipedia tells us, that it is a musical notation system, a set of 5 parallel horizontal lines, often referred to as staff lines, on which and between which musical notes are carefully written. There isn't a single word about the keys. The basic information about the grand staff in all theory textbooks is presented incorrectly. This causes irreparable harm to every student of music and piano. World musicology doesn't even mention the fact that the grand staff is a system, not just a set. Well, this is a more accurate definition of the concept of the grand staff. In actual fact, the grand staff is not merely a set, but rather an integrated system specifically designed for recording and reproducing musical sounds. Second, the grand staff system fundamentally consists of 2 interconnected components: the symbols, which are musical notation, and the actual sounds of the keys. Third, notes and sounds are visually connected through the lines and spaces much more clearly than through naming. Notes on the staff are on the keys. That is when we learn the notes separately and the keys separately. That is when there are names on the keys. We are challenging the very foundation of music theory, which claims that the staff is merely a set of lines and spaces. Restoring the entire structure of music education must begin immediately in light of this new fact. That is precisely why comprehensive professional training for every dedicated music teacher is now absolutely essential to effectively avoid any potential misconceptions. and the misuse of attempts to explain the notation system in any other way. However, many teachers are not even fully aware of this. The staff is an indivisible symmetrical system that includes the lines, the spaces between them, and the white keys as a unified whole, specifically the white keys. The bass and treble clefs mirror each other. This integration maintains the integrity of the entire system, preventing it from being broken down into disparate fragments and isolated parts. This comprehensive framework naturally and effectively aligns with fundamental human perception, truly and crucially uniting all the main centers of perception. The next important concept I would like to briefly discuss is specifically the note sound. The term note sound was first introduced by the author Elena Helen Heine at a scientific conference in Oxford in 2018. The grand staff, or stave, which unites the treble and bass clefs, serves as the universal equivalent of notation and the musical system in the world of music. The basis of the grand staff is the organization of the white keys, which have a direct graphical connection with the lines and spaces of the grand staff. Within this system of visual perception of notes and sounds, accidentals fulfill a subsidiary function. Individual treble and bass clefs, as well as other clefs for different musical instruments, alto, tenor, and so on, are of an applied, non-systematic nature, determined by the range of a particular instrument, and cannot serve as a universal equivalent of the musical system. As is well known, with the advent of recording sounds using notes, music became a written language. In this language, each sound, according to its precise vibration, has its equivalent in the form of a note symbol with an exact position on the lines and spaces of the staff. In turn, treble and bass clefs are systematically positioned on the grand staff. That is why there is a long-standing practice of transcribing orchestral, operatic, and ensemble parts into the piano keys, in which middle C serves as the reference point for both the keys and the notes. Each sign, each musical symbol, and its vibration were linked together by the creator of musical notation, Guido of Arezzo, in the 11th century AD. The description of this system was given by Guido in the treatise Micrologus. First came the creation of musical notation, the connection between the note symbol and the sound vibration. It became obscure and blurred due to numerous historical and social circumstances. The discovery of the fact that the grand staff is a unified system of interaction between symbols and vibrations, as well as the creation of the new Soft Mozart technology, helped to restore the original meaning of the note as a single symbol and precise vibration, and also made the connection between sounds and the symbols of notation more evident.